After years of silence, the world Daniel Carter thought he knew collapsed with a single email. Stationed at a remote base in Djibouti, Daniel, a 42-year-old master sergeant, opened his laptop to find divorce papers sent coldly by Emily, his wife of 13 years. No explanation, no apology, just a PDF attachment titled "Let's Be Adults." She had drained their joint accounts, moved her new boyfriend into their home in Charleston, and left Daniel to process the wreckage thousands of miles from home. But Emily didn't know that Daniel, a man forged by combat and betrayal, had already seen the signs, the secretive gym trips, the late nights, the new passwords. Quietly, methodically, Daniel had protected himself, securing vital documents and hiding away savings she could never touch. Betrayal didn't crush him, it sharpened him. While Emily was plotting her new life, Daniel was preparing his counterattack. When he uncovered a web of fraud, fake signatures, stolen assets, and criminal ties, it wasn't rage that fueled him, but cold, relentless clarity. With military precision, he dismantled everything she and her accomplice tried to build. In the end, justice wasn't loud. It was patient. It was thorough. And it belonged entirely to Daniel Carter. The email came through at 2:17 p.m., while I was sitting in a reinforced tent in northern Iraq, halfway through my deployment. Subject line: "Let's be adults about this." 13 years of marriage. Ended in 3 cold sentences. Emily had already filed for divorce. She had emptied our joint account, $88,500 gone, and moved her new boyfriend into our home. Our dog. My Seahawks sweatshirt. My life. All handed over like I was some temporary tenant. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't even reply with more than one word, "Understood." Because Emily didn't know something crucial. She thought I was naive. That being overseas made me blind. But soldiers know how to read the signs, the sudden gym habits, the new friends I never met, the late-night work calls. I saw it coming. And I prepared. While she was pulling away, I quietly made moves. I secured my military documents in a private storage unit. Moved my grandfather's watch and my mom's silver heirlooms somewhere safe. I opened a hidden account in a separate bank and started diverting a portion of my salary. Nothing big enough to set off alarms. Just enough to ensure I wouldn't come home to nothing. I never liked conflict off the battlefield. I believed in loyalty, in patience, and trusting your partner. But when Emily turned a marriage into a transaction, she woke something different in me, not rage, but focus. 2 weeks after that email, I found out she had forged my signature to refinance our home. Took out $330,000. With a guy who had DUIs and a fraud charge on record. I was 7,000 miles away, eating cold food and dodging mortars, and she was forging documents in my name. So I did what soldiers do best. I formed a strategy. I contacted a fellow Army vet who became a lawyer. I gathered paperwork, accessed our home security footage remotely, and kept detailed logs of every move they made. When she started transferring money to a third party, a shady real estate agent, I traced it all. What she didn't know: that agent and her new boyfriend were running a scam on military spouses. Targeting homes where the soldier was deployed. Stealing equity. Selling homes under market value. Pocketing the rest. She either got swept into the scheme, or she was in on it. But I didn't retaliate with chaos. I responded with evidence. When I returned to the U.S., I didn't call her. I met my lawyer, handed over everything, and we went straight to the FBI. Within weeks, they had the entire operation under surveillance. I watched from across the street as federal agents arrested them both, him for conspiracy and fraud, her for forgery and theft. She begged me to talk. Said it wasn't what I thought. But she never denied it. And by then, I didn't need an explanation. I needed closure. I signed the divorce papers without a word. She forfeited the house, repaid what she stole, and signed a statement admitting to the fraud. I didn't press charges. I didn't have to. Her actions had consequences, and I watched justice carry them out. Today, I live on 10 acres in Montana with my dog, Scout. The house is quiet. The creek runs behind the property, and no one knows my name out here. I left the uniform behind, but not the values. Honor. Preparation. Discipline. Emily thought she was ending a marriage. What she ended was her ability to manipulate a man who'd survived war zones, loss, and betrayal. She underestimated what a soldier becomes when pushed past his breaking point, not broken, but forged. Stronger. Smarter. Free. It was a Monday morning when I walked into that boardroom thinking it was just another quarterly update. Instead, I was met by silence, nervous glances, and the CEO's forced smile. "Let's get straight to it," he said, sliding the papers across the table. "We're restructuring. Your position has been eliminated." I was stunned, but only for a moment. My name is Marcus Bell, 39 years old, and until that moment, I was the vice president of strategy at Valen Tech, the company I had helped grow from a $4 million startup into a $100 million powerhouse. I had given 11 years of my life, long nights, missed birthdays, red-eye flights, and deals that carried the company through 2 economic downturns. And just like that, I was out. No warning. No gratitude. Just a handshake and a soulless best of luck. What they didn't realize was that I wasn't walking out empty-handed. 6 months earlier, I had noticed small changes: a junior executive copied on confidential emails, my name quietly removed from strategic meetings. My gut told me something was off. So, I started preparing. I backed up all my key reports, saved presentations, and most importantly, I preserved the personal relationships I had built with our clients. While they saw contracts, I saw trust. And trust doesn't transfer with a pink slip. What they also didn't know was that I'd quietly retained partial ownership of a proprietary system Valen had built, one they could not legally replicate without my consent. I didn't build it to trap them. But when I sensed betrayal, I made sure they couldn't take my ideas and leave me behind. 2 days after I was let go, the board announced a new hire to replace me. Someone younger. Cheaper. Someone they thought would bring fresh eyes. By the end of that week, I had already made 3 calls. Not angry rants, just respectful, professional conversations with longtime clients letting them know I was no longer with the company. Nothing more. But they read between the lines. "Wherever you land, Marcus," one of them said, "we're following." By month's end, 5 of Valen's biggest accounts had either paused or pulled their contracts. Internal panic set in. I heard from former colleagues that leadership was scrambling to repair relationships they never invested in personally because they had underestimated the power of the people behind the products. They saw me as a number. Replaceable. But clients didn't buy from the company. They bought from me because they trusted me, because I delivered. 3 months later, I co-founded a new firm, Altera Insights, with 2 like-minded partners. Within the first quarter, we signed $6.5 million in new business. Half of it from former Valen clients. Then came the final blow. I was invited to speak on a panel at the Global Strategy Summit, an event Valen's C-suite regularly attended. They sat in the front row as I presented a case study on client retention and ethical leadership. I never named names. I didn't have to. The data spoke for itself. Afterward, the same CEO who fired me approached. "Impressive," he said stiffly. I smiled. "Just doing what I've always done, building things that last." They took my title, my office, my salary. But they couldn't take what I'd earned: trust, respect, and the ability to rebuild stronger than before. That's the thing about people like us: we don't crumble when we're cut out. We adapt. We evolve. And when the dust settles, we're the ones still standing. Because loyalty isn't about contracts. It's about character. The divorce papers arrived via email. 1 PDF. No explanation, just a subject line: "Let's be adults about this." 13 years of marriage ended with 3 cold sentences. My name is Alex Grant, 40 years old, Master Sergeant in the U.S. Army. I was stationed overseas when my wife decided she was done waiting. She emptied our joint account, moved a new man into our home, and filed the papers, all while I was deployed. But this story isn't about heartbreak. It's about preparation. Because while she was quietly planning her exit, I was quietly securing my future. 6 months before deployment, I noticed subtle shifts, late nights at work, a sudden obsession with fitness that didn't show results, and locked phones that were once left face up. I didn't accuse her. I didn't beg for attention. That's not who I am. I watched. I listened. And I prepared. I opened a separate account under a different bank. Redirected part of my pay. Secured our important documents, birth certificates, house deed, and my military pension files in a storage unit across town. I moved my late father's watch and my mother's jewelry there too. Quiet moves. Strategic ones. So when the email came, I didn't panic. I didn't reply with rage. I responded with one word, understood. Because while she thought she was taking everything, I had already ensured she'd get nothing that mattered. 2 weeks later, she drained the remainder of our account, nearly $90,000. She must have thought I wouldn't notice from across the world. But I had alerts on everything. I knew the second she made the transfer. And then I checked our home security system, something she forgot I still had access to. I saw him. Drinking coffee from my mug. Wearing my hoodie. Walking my dog. In the house I built. That's when the plan changed. I contacted an old Army buddy turned lawyer. Sent him everything, every transfer, every forged document, every piece of evidence. Because, yes, she forged my signature on a refinance application to pull over $300,000 in equity from our home. And her boyfriend? Listed as a co-applicant. But here's where it gets interesting. Turns out her boyfriend, Jeremy, had a history. Fraud. DUIs. And a pattern of dating women whose husbands were deployed, convincing them to sell their homes fast and under market, taking a cut of the cash, and moving on. Becky, my wife, was either a pawn or a partner. With my lawyer's help, we froze the accounts. Flagged the fraud. Notified the bank, the VA, and ultimately, the FBI. Because this wasn't just betrayal. This was a scheme, and we weren't the only victims. I returned home without telling anyone. I watched from a distance as they tried to list our house, without knowing I had the deed, the evidence, and the law on my side. The day they brought a real estate agent to the house, I recorded everything. Every conversation. Every shady deal. And sent it straight to the FBI. They were arrested on my front lawn. The look on her face? Priceless. In the end, Jeremy got 8 years. The agent 12. And Becky? She signed everything over to avoid charges, our house, the stolen money, any claim to my pension. I walked away with my name cleared, my property intact, and my dignity stronger than ever. Now I live in Montana, in a cabin tucked between pine trees and silence. No neighbors. Just peace. They thought I'd come back broken. But I came back prepared. Because when you're underestimated, you don't just survive. You rebuild. And this time, on your terms. They say betrayal feels like a knife in the back. But when it's someone you've loved for 13 years, it feels more like a slow, suffocating burn. One that doesn't kill you, but scorches everything you thought was safe. My name is Jack Ellison. I'm 41. Army vet. Used to be a husband, a homeowner, a man with a life planned out. Until my wife decided to burn it all down while I was 7,000 miles away, stationed overseas. I got the divorce papers in my inbox, no conversation, no warning. Just a subject line that read, "Let's be adults about this." She'd already emptied our accounts. Moved another man into our home. Even forged my signature on a refinance loan to pull hundreds of thousands in equity from the house. And the worst part? She didn't think I'd do anything. She thought I'd be too far, too distracted, too broken. She was wrong. What followed was a year-long unraveling. I worked with a military buddy turned attorney. Pulled records. Traced every wire transfer. Logged into our home security system from my base and watched that man drinking from my mug, sleeping in my bed, walking my dog. It nearly broke me. But it didn't. Instead, I got smart. Strategic. Patient. I returned to the States in silence. Filed the right reports. Froze the accounts. Worked with the FBI to build a case. Turns out, she wasn't just unfaithful, she was part of a larger scheme, one targeting military families. She and her boyfriend were flipping homes behind the backs of deployed spouses. I wasn't the first. But I was the one who cracked it wide open. They were arrested on our front lawn. And just like that, the house, the accounts, my name, everything was returned to me. But not my peace. That part? That took longer. I couldn't go back to that house. I couldn't stay in that city. So I left. I used what was left of the equity to buy a modest log cabin outside Missoula, Montana. 2 bedrooms. 10 acres. A quiet creek out back. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I got a dog. A big, loyal shepherd named Ranger. Started working with my hands again, woodwork, repairs, odd jobs around town. And slowly, something in me began to heal. There was no grand epiphany. No Hollywood moment of clarity. Just the simple rhythm of rebuilding. A roof over my head that I nailed down myself. A fire I lit with my own 2 hands. And nights where the only sound was the wind in the trees, and not the voice in my head asking, why wasn't I enough? Some nights I still wonder what she's doing. If she thinks about what she lost. If she regrets it. But I don't let those thoughts stay long. They don't belong here anymore. Because this place, this life, I built it without lies. Without betrayal. Without shortcuts. A few months ago, I got a letter from a Navy wife in Texas. Her husband had been another target of the same scheme. She thanked me for fighting back. Said the FBI told her my case is what helped shut the whole thing down. I keep that letter pinned to the fridge. It reminds me that the pain wasn't pointless. That standing up for yourself, quietly, steadily, is sometimes louder than any outburst. I lost a marriage. But I found something better, my peace. And these days, peace is priceless. For most of my life, I was told I was too soft. Too quiet. Too sensitive. Too forgiving. My ex-husband used to say it like it was a compliment, "You've got such a gentle heart, Claire." But the truth was, he didn't respect that heart. He counted on it. He counted on me to never speak up. Never fight back. And for years, I didn't. I made excuses for his temper. Dismissed the late nights, the secrecy, the shift in how he looked at me after 10 years of marriage. I told myself we were just going through a phase. That the distance between us was temporary. Until the day I came home from visiting my sister in Colorado and found another woman's toothbrush in my bathroom. He didn't even try to deny it. Said it was complicated. Said he never meant for it to happen this way. Then he asked me to leave. From the house I helped build. From the life I'd sacrificed my dreams for. For 2 weeks, I stayed with friends. Numb. Shaky. Quiet, like always. Until one morning, I walked past a mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. She looked hollow. Like someone who'd been erased. That's when I decided to stop being the version of me everyone expected. No more soft Claire. No more silence. I found a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, one of the best family attorneys in the state. What my ex didn't know was that while he was off building his new complicated life, I'd quietly been documenting everything. The hidden accounts. The under-the-table consulting jobs. The real estate investments in his brother's name. Turns out, he wasn't just a cheater, he was a fraud. I built my case brick by brick. Every receipt. Every email. Every transaction. And when it was time to go to court, I didn't walk in looking broken. I walked in with my head high, evidence in hand, and a quiet fire in my chest. The judge awarded me more than he ever imagined I'd walk away with. He lost the house, the lake cabin, even his precious weekend Porsche. Because I wasn't too soft anymore, I was strategic, focused, prepared. But here's the part no one sees coming. It wasn't the financial win that healed me. It was what happened after. I moved to Asheville, North Carolina. Bought a fixer-upper with wide windows and creaky hardwood floors. Adopted a rescue dog named Finn. Started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. And slowly, I rebuilt. Not just my life, but myself. Some nights I still feel the sting of betrayal. Some wounds don't vanish, they just stop bleeding. But now, when I look in the mirror, I see someone real. Not soft. Not weak. But steady. A woman who refused to let heartbreak define her. A woman who turned pain into power, silence into strength. Last week, I ran into a friend from my old life. She blinked, surprised at the glow she said I had. "You look free," she said. I smiled. Because I am. Not because I got revenge. Not because I won. But because I finally chose myself. And that, I've learned, is the kind of power no one can ever take away from you again. It's funny how quiet peace is. After years of chaos, the silence feels like a song you forgot you loved. I used to think strength looked like control, tight schedules, bulletproof routines, carefully curated smiles. For years, I lived that way. My husband and I had the picture-perfect life, a 3-bedroom home in a quiet Colorado suburb, matching coffee mugs, the occasional holiday card that made us look like the perfect couple. But beneath the polished surface, something was always off. It started with small things. Late nights that didn't add up. Empty conversations. I used to wait up for him, hoping the headlights I'd see through the window would be his. Most nights, they weren't. When the truth finally came, through a text message, of all things, I didn't scream. Didn't cry. He had left. Not just emotionally, but physically. Moved in with someone else. Emptied our joint accounts. Filed for divorce. I remember sitting on the floor of our empty living room, surrounded by echoing silence and unopened mail. All I could think was, so this is what betrayal sounds like. But here's what he didn't know. While he was busy building a new life without me, I was quietly protecting mine. I'd started therapy a year earlier, something he called a waste of time. But those sessions saved me. They taught me how to breathe again. How to see my worth beyond what I gave to other people. I'd started saving money in a separate account. Researched property law. Talked to women who'd been through divorce and come out stronger. When the paperwork hit my inbox, I didn't panic. I signed it. Sent it back. And then I packed my bags, left the keys on the counter, and drove away without looking back. No revenge. No nasty texts. No late-night drunk calls. Just silence. I moved to a small cabin in northern Idaho. Bought it with the money I had saved, plus the settlement he never thought I was smart enough to fight for. The cabin sits on 5 acres, backed by pine trees, with a lake just a 10-minute walk from the front porch. Most mornings, I drink coffee with my feet up on the railing, wrapped in a knit blanket. There's no noise here, except the birds, the wind, and my breath. I plant wildflowers in the spring. Read books I never had time for. Bake bread that sometimes burns but makes the whole place smell like home. And slowly, piece by piece, I built a life I didn't need to escape from. Sometimes, people ask if I'd ever want to confront him. Tell him what he lost. Show him how much better I'm doing. But honestly, that's not my style. My life is the closure. I don't need him to feel guilt. I don't need to win some imaginary battle. Because the truth is, there is no battle anymore. He took the chaos with him. And I kept the calm. The last thing I heard, his new relationship fell apart. Something about lies and money. Classic. Meanwhile, I'm over here baking cinnamon rolls on a rainy Tuesday, smiling at the dog I rescued from the shelter, and planning a solo trip to the Oregon coast. I never thought peace could be so loud in my heart. So no, I didn't get revenge. But I got something better. I got myself back. And that's the kind of ending that doesn't need fireworks, just freedom. There's something surreal about watching the person you once loved smirk while you're falling apart. There we were. In a polished courtroom in downtown Atlanta. Him in his tailored suit, flanked by his high-powered attorney. Me, alone at the plaintiff's table with trembling fingers and a heart that had taken one hit too many. My name is Rachel Grant, and after 12 years of marriage, I thought the worst thing my husband could do was cheat. I was wrong. The worst thing he did was laugh. He laughed when I told the judge I didn't know he'd moved our joint savings to an offshore account. He laughed when I said I couldn't access our home's equity line anymore. He even laughed when my lawyer objected, like this whole proceeding was just a game. You never understood how business works, he'd say in that condescending tone I'd once mistaken for confidence. He'd spent years convincing me to leave my job, focus on the kids, and let him handle the finances. I trusted him. Believed him when he said we were partners. But somewhere along the way, I became a liability to him. An accessory he'd outgrown. So he decided to erase me. Filed for divorce while I was on a wellness retreat in Sedona. Changed the locks. Told our children it was just for the best. He showed up to court looking like he'd already won. And for a moment, I thought maybe he had. Until my attorney calmly opened a leather folder and pulled out a single, yellowed page. I'd like to introduce Exhibit C, she said. The courtroom quieted. It was a prenuptial amendment. Filed and notarized 6 years ago, after my husband's mother passed away, leaving behind her considerable estate. At the time, I'd signed it as a favor. His mother had requested it. I hadn't read it closely. I trusted him. But he forgot one thing, his mother never trusted him. And she made sure I had protection. The clause read, in the event that my son initiates divorce proceedings against his spouse, all inherited assets transferred into the marital estate shall revert to the spouse as a matter of fairness and moral obligation. Translation? The lake house? Mine. The business property in Charleston? Mine. The investment accounts he'd used to leverage control? All transferred in my name. The smirk dropped off his face like a mask. He looked stunned, like the air had been knocked from his lungs. Suddenly, his expensive lawyer leaned in, whispering fast. The judge adjusted his glasses and read the clause again, this time aloud. Silence followed. And I? For the first time in months, I breathed. I didn't gloat. Didn't smile. I just sat there as everything he thought he'd taken slipped right through his fingers. He stood up, tried to protest, but the judge waved him down. These are binding terms, he said. You filed the motion. You triggered the clause. My ex looked at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Maybe he'd never seen me clearly until that moment. Not as a victim. Not as someone fragile. But as someone who quietly kept the receipts. After the hearing, he walked out without a word. No apology. No fight left in him. And me? I walked home. Not to a rented apartment, not to a lawyer's office. Home, to the house that now had my name on the deed. Sometimes justice doesn't come wrapped in anger or revenge. Sometimes it comes softly, like the sound of a clause being read aloud in a courtroom. And sometimes, that's all the closure you need. One of the most powerful lessons from stories like these is the importance of preparation, self-worth, and trusting your instincts. Life doesn't always unfold the way we hope, relationships break, people change, and sometimes those we love the most can hurt us the deepest. But these experiences don't have to define our future. They can refine us. Whether it's a failing marriage, betrayal from family, or professional sabotage, what matters is how you respond. These stories show that staying quiet doesn't mean being weak. It can mean watching, planning, and rising at the right moment. For anyone in their 30s or 40s navigating a messy divorce, a toxic work situation, or simply feeling unseen, remember this: you're allowed to protect what you've built. You're allowed to walk away from what doesn't honor your value. And most importantly, you are not obligated to explain your worth to anyone who refuses to see it. In the end, your quiet resilience might just be the loudest statement you ever make.